So if you have the iPhone 14 Pro, which is now 1 year old, and you are thinking of upgrading to the newly released iPhone 15 Pro, in this video we are going to be comparing to see whether there's really much of an improvement or of an update when it comes to the new devices, and to see how speed test and overall device usage holds up between the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro. So the iPhone 14 Pro that you see here was released 1 year ago. This is the deep purple color. Last year when they released this phone, the iPhone 14 Pro, it was available in deep purple, in gold, silver and black, and this was the newly introduced color, and it was the most popular color. Now keep in mind that as I test this iPhone, it's 1 year old, so if we go into our settings, you'll be able to see that the maximum health capacity of this device has degraded. This iPhone 14 Pro has been having issues, and even the 14 Pro Max has been having issues with the battery. But with that in mind, we'll come back to that and I'll explain why this has a factor to play in what I'm going to be doing. So this one is the iPhone 15 Pro, and this color that you see here is the natural titanium, but surprisingly this is not the most popular color when it comes to the iPhone 15 Pro. The most popular color is this one, the natural titanium, and a number of people were actually buying this, and the blue titanium was the second, followed by the black titanium and white titanium. So this one is pretty much a new device. So if we go into the settings, you can see this one is on 100%, unlike the iPhone 14 Pro that's on my left hand side. Now if you have an old iPhone like the 14 Pro and you are thinking of upgrading to the 15 Pro, there really should be a performance increase, even if the chipset or processor and GPU are the same, because of this. So watch this.
The laws of chemistry say that batteries naturally degrade over time, so the maximum power that they can output slowly goes down over time. So what Apple chose to do is underclock the CPU of iPhones with older, degraded batteries to prevent them from hitting the lower battery power limit. The problem is they did this for a while without telling anyone, so that's where the conspiracy sort of started years ago. They eventually got called out publicly and had to admit it and paid $100+ million lawsuit out over it. But now, if your old iPhone experiences an unexpected shutdown due to the battery not being able to supply enough power, a new setting appears that literally gives you the option to keep running at full speeds anyway. But at the end of the day, this behavior is built into the iPhone you already have, not in the software update waiting for you. So go ahead and update your phone for security's sake. Also, if you have an old slow phone, consider replacing the battery instead of the whole phone. It literally gets faster again. You're welcome.
So put simply, like on this iPhone 14 Pro, as this device gets older and older and the maximum health capacity starts to drop, there's definitely going to be a decrease in performance, and this is done so that the battery or power demand of the CPU and GPU doesn't trigger the high limit of the battery where you all of a sudden or instantly see your battery or your phone just power off, and it's done to avoid that. So keep that in mind. And speaking of battery, there's actually a difference between the iPhone 14 Pro and the 15 Pro. So the 14 Pro has a battery capacity of 3200 milliamp hours, and the iPhone 15 Pro took that a little bit further. It has 3274 milliamp hours. Now, because the iPhone 14 Pro had been experiencing some issues in the battery, you can see here Apple on the iPhone 15, they added this sub-menu setting that says charging optimization, and it's not here on the 14 Pro, and here on the 15 it actually gives you the ability to limit your charging to 80%, and it's an added step to try and stop your battery maximum health capacity from dropping as fast as it did on the 14 Pro. So it's a good measure. And now let's talk about the main differences that are here with these devices in terms of physical shape or hardware wise. The iPhone 14 Pro is actually a stainless steel, and it has a matte glass finish on the back, and you can see when you bring it closer to the camera, you can see the stainless side finishing here. it shines and you can see it reflects light so much. But compared to the iPhone 15, this is a titanium finish, meaning that instead of weighing 206 grams, it's slightly lighter. It comes in at 187 grams, and you can see the sides here are made of titanium. It's not as reflective, and when you touch the glass finish here, it's not as smooth as the iPhone 14 Pro. See, my fingers moves freely without any friction, but on the 15 Pro there's a little bit of a friction force there, and that's a little bit of a difference. Now, another physical difference that's here and new with the iPhone 15 has to do with this physical button that you can see here. So you have this physical button that you can hold and be able to set it to different settings and perform different function, and there's a sub added menu setting that allows you to be able to customize this. So if you go into here, you can see you have action button, and you can set it to different things, and even shortcuts that will be able to allow you to do things such as unlocking your car or doing different things. So for now, I'll set it to silent mode, but if you were to go into your settings on the iPhone 14 Pro, this has not been added. Now, the 14 Pro still does have the ring silent switch, and this is still a classic one, and sometimes I'm still stuck between whether I like the action button or whether I like the silent and ringer switch. In terms of processor and speed, the iPhone 15 Pro has an A17 Pro chip, and it's the first time that Apple has actually put a Pro rated chip into the iPhone. So it comes with a A17 Pro chip that has 6-core CPU, 6-core GPU, and 16-core neural engine, while the iPhone 14 Pro actually comes with an A16 chip that has 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, and 16-core neural engine. So in a sense of cores, or in a calculation of cores, the iPhone 15 Pro actually has one extra GPU core. So that we'll see how it holds up when it comes to testing like different games and multi-threaded workloads. Now, when it comes to camera, both the iPhone 15 Pro and the 14 Pro have the same cameras. They have a 48 megapixel main camera, but there is a difference with the iPhone 15 Pro because according to Apple, it has the next gen portrait with focus and depth control, but you still get depth and focus control with the 14 Pro. There's a difference though when it comes to the pictures that you take with the iPhone 15 Pro and the 14 Pro, because with the iPhone 15 Pro, it actually takes the 48 megapixel on the main sensor that it shoots and it downsamples them to 24 megapixels, and while the iPhone 14 Pro has a 48 megapixel main, it still takes the 48 megapixels and downsamples them to 12 megapixel pictures. So I actually took some pictures to try and compare this. Here you can see I took a picture and the difference is really very minor. You only notice it when you zoom in all the way. You can see here on the iPhone 14 Pro, I zoomed in and took some pictures of my TELUS router, but on the 15 Pro, you can see the text is slightly bigger and you have the option to zoom in slightly more. Even though it was the 48 megapixel sensor that took it, the text on the iPhone 15 Pro is more usable and you can see it's slightly better, but it's rarely noticeable and you only notice it when you zoom in all the way to the max, which is a bit unfortunate, and for most people like me and you, this is a difference that we hardly notice. I've closed all the applications, and right here we are going to go into the settings, because when you get your new device you want to go into your settings and set it up properly. So let's go, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think the iPhone 15 Pro actually was a little bit faster. We'll go back to the main page so that they both are opening the same page. Close it and then we'll open it up. This time pretty much the same, and we'll close it again and try maybe for the last time. 3, 2, 1. Exactly the same speed, so no change when it comes to opening the settings app. And then of course when you get your new phone, you want to test the new cameras and see how it holds up. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think the 15 Pro was slightly faster this time around, but I felt like I clicked the 14 Pro a bit later. Then we'll try that again. 3, 2, 1. 14 Pro seems to be faster. And then if the camera app was opened, 14 Pro still seems to be faster. This is interesting. Now, of course, you would also want to check Safari and test the different networks and speeds that you have. So we'll try Safari on the both phones right here. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so Safari, oh, it's actually because I have some tabs open here. So I'll keep it consistent where it opens up the same page right here. So we'll close up Safari and then we'll go and open up Safari. 3, 2, 1. Seems like the 14 Pro is faster or more or less the same. We'll close it up and then try again. Same distance. 3, 2, 1. I think the 14 Pro for some reason seems to be opening faster now. Here we want to do a speed test of our internet. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, the 15 Pro seemed to be slightly faster, just like a millisecond or something like that. And then we'll do a test, same network, same Wi-Fi. Now let's test and see which one gets the results faster and gets the fastest internet. So it's interesting because it's the same Wi-Fi network that I'm on, but you can see this is the download speed. This is same speed. They are taking the same time to download and do the speed test. But for some reason, you can see here on my results on the iPhone 14 Pro, it's almost double the speed that I'm getting on the iPhone 15 Pro, which is quite interesting. This is something that I actually didn't expect. We'll try and do another speed test and see whether it remains consistent. So 3, 2, 1. Same. I like how they keeping the same consistent speed when it comes to this. Okay, now this time around you can see the 15 Pro is getting the upper hand of it. So this is interesting, and it's actually a bigger margin than what the 14 Pro had when it had the upper hand. So you can see here with this result, now the iPhone 15 Pro beats the iPhone 14 Pro. And maybe our network is a little bit crowded, but you can see it really doesn't make much of a difference when it comes to the speed test. When you are testing these two devices, we'll do a third test which will be final and see which one wins best out of 3. You can see here pretty much close, but the 14 Pro seems to be better. 15 Pro struggling a little bit, but let's see. 15 Pro is actually doing the upload faster while the 14 Pro is still doing the download. You can see here 15 Pro is done and 14 Pro is still doing a speed test. And right there you can see the results that we have. Upload speed pretty much constant, but the download speed, the iPhone 14 Pro beats the iPhone 15 Pro, which is a little bit interesting. Now, according to Apple, the iPhone 15 Pro actually has one extra core for GPU. So I have loaded some games here that we will want to try and open up. One popular game that's quite big and useful is this EA Sports FC24. So let's see which one opens it up fast. 3, 2, 1. It's actually faster on here. Oh, and then you can see this on the iPhone 15 Pro. It's definitely faster. You can see it's way faster. And since I had just downloaded the game, you can see how much I have to log in and input my information. But if I was to close this, let's try that again, and then we'll see if the 15 Pro still beats the iPhone 14 Pro. 3, 2, 1. EA Sports. It's in the okay. Game. Seems to be more. Okay, 15 Pro seems to be slightly faster, but yeah, these are exactly the same if you ask me. Oh, the 14 Pro actually beat the 15 Pro to get to this screen that tells you to sign in. I wonder if it's because the 14 Pro had a faster network connection like what we saw when we were doing the speed test. Now I want to do a speaker test between these two devices. So we'll start with the iPhone 14 Pro and then go to the 15 Pro. Same video.
Ascended for heavens, I'm headed away from the universe. I'm coming back, not assuming things. Tempted to touch on my sinner, but not a beginner. Though every day is a beginning. I'm critical, breathing, I'm dusty. I'm kicking my engines, you nasty. I speed on your misery home, you. Misery home, you. I never liked you, and you never liked me. Stay home.
Okay, so that was the iPhone 14 Pro. Now let's go to the 15 Pro and see if you'll be able to tell a difference when it comes to the speaker.
Heavens, I'm headed away from the universe. I'm coming back, not assuming things. Tempted to touch on my sinner, but not a beginner. Though every day is a beginning. I'm critical, breathing, I'm dusty. I'm kicking my engines, you nasty. I speed on your misery home, you. Misery home, you. I never liked you, and you never liked me. Stay home, but nothing contagious. It's my anger, running around in the city. I'm talking.
If you ask me, the speakers sound exactly the same and I cannot tell any difference between the two devices. When it comes to device brightness, well, the brightness is exactly the same. They have the same top niche brightness. I believe it's 2000 nits of brightness. And so whether you were to go to the maximum brightness on the iPhone 15 Pro and you go to the maximum brightness on the iPhone 14 Pro, it won't wash out the 14 Pro because the top nit brightness is exactly the same and there's exactly no difference between the two brightness between the devices. So I downloaded Geekbench 6 to be able to test this device and see which one performs faster. So we'll open up Geekbench score on both devices and we'll open it up here on the iPhone 15 Pro and then we'll do a CPU Geekbench score to see which one holds up faster. Devices started up at the same time and I'll speed up this portion so that you don't have to wait a long time. Time elapsed is exactly the same right here as you can see, and you can see the iPhone 15 Pro is done, and for single core it got a score of 2945 and for multi-core it got a score of 7387. The iPhone 14 Pro just finished now, and for single core it got a score of 2651, which is pretty close, but for multi-core it got a score of 6890. Now this is interesting because keep in mind that this device is 1 year old, and at the same time if I was to go into the settings and go to general and go to where it says storage right there, you can see this phone basically has a lot of space that it isn't yet utilizing because I haven't set or put most of my details there. But if you go to the iPhone 14 Pro, you can see it's literally almost full. So I'm pretty impressed by the results that we got, even though the space on this iPhone 14 Pro is close. I'm sure if I was to do another Geekbench score, the gap will get narrower, but definitely the iPhone 15 Pro does edge up the iPhone 14 Pro when it comes to CPU and GPU slightly. So as a person who's been using both these two devices, the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro, this one for about 2 weeks, this one for over a year now, some of the differences that I hear, the major one that I have to highlight is this: the new USB-C port that's there on the iPhone 15 Pro. If you are a person that likes to keep your cables the same and your devices with the same port, this is a big reason for you to upgrade. Also, like I mentioned, the new iPhone, the iPhone 15 Pro, has a slightly improved CPU and GPU processor that is now the A17 Pro compared to the A16 Bionic chip. This one should give you slightly faster performance, but overly when it comes to like opening different applications or setting up your device and using it on a daily basis, you aren't going to see much of a difference. Another change that's here between these two devices, according to Apple, is that the iPhone 15 Pro has slightly thinner bezels compared to the 14 Pro. So you can see the 14 Pro right here and you can see the 15 Pro side by side. It's slightly noticeable, but it's not something that you can just pinpoint out. now we are looking at it's like looking at a microscope basically to try and see the difference in the thinner bezels. Also, I mentioned the difference of cameras, where the iPhone 15 Pro is basically taking 48 megapixel camera and then downsampling those to 24 megapixels, and the 14 Pro is taking 48 megapixels and putting them out as 12 megapixels. So when you zoom in, you will see more details, slightly more details on the iPhone 15 Pro, but it's not a change that you will notice if you are just a regular user on a daily basis. And also not forgetting that the new iPhones, well, they have sort of reworked the edges on the 15 Pro devices, so when you're holding it in the hand, it's not as sore as it was before, and it feels smoother. The edges are not as sharp as it was on the iPhone, let me see, on the 14 Pro. Yeah, for sure you can feel the difference, and there's a very minor slight weight improvement between the iPhone 15 Pro and the 14 Pro, because the 15 Pro is a few grams lighter because of the titanium body and frame that they are using. So basically those are just some of the differences that are here, and how you can expect your new device if you're getting the iPhone 15 Pro and coming from the 14 Pro. Personally, for me, it's really not a big jump coming from the iPhone 14 Pro to the 15 Pro, and if the few changes that are here, like the action button, USB-C, slightly better processor, thinner bezels, make a difference for you, then maybe this is the device for you. But other than that, if those things don't matter to you and you are pretty much happy with the iPhone 14 Pro that you have, well, you're not really missing out on anything much. Well, that's about it for me. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Drunk and I'm flexing, I'm litty cause life is a blessing. I'm currently counting my blessing, ascending for heavens. I'm headed away from the universe, I'm coming back, not assuming things. Tempted to touch, I'm a sinner, but not a beginner. Though every day is a beginning, I'm critical breathing, I'm dusty, I'm kicking my engines, you nasty, I speed on your misery home, you, misery home, you. I never liked you, and you never liked me, stay warm. But nothing contagious is my anger, running around in the city, I'm talking.